As he left her sleeping forms, Mia curled beneath the covers, Bruno lying at her feet, Alexander felt a fierce protectiveness rise within him. By dawn, when Mia's mother would arrive, he vowed to stand by her and her daughter, not as a business transaction, but as a family. Tonight, he would draft legal documents for temporary guardianship, call his board to reassign tasks tomorrow, and perhaps forgo the early morning briefing he typically demanded. Because tomorrow, for the first time, something other than profit would dictate his calendar. The promise of reunification and the fragile threads of trust being woven between a magnate and a small girl who changed his world forever. And with that, Alexander Stone, man of means, architect of skylines, closed the chapter on his solitary reign, determined that in the days to come, every move he made would honor the child who had rescued his heart. The first light of dawn filtered through the lace curtains of the guest suite when a soft knock sounded at the door. Alexander Stone, sleepless but resolute, opened it to find Officer Ramirez waiting with a petite woman, her eyes red-rimmed but alight with relief. Behind her, clutching a frayed teddy bear, stood Mia, face alight with hope and nerves. "Mia," her mother, Natalie Thompson, whispered. She took a stumbling step forward, voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." Mia launched herself into Natalie's arms, sobbing joyfully. Alexander watched as the two embraced in tears. Daughter and mother reconnected at last. His chest tightened with emotion he hadn't anticipated. Pride, compassion, and a deep-seated anger at the circumstances that had forced this abandonment. Natalie looked up at him, gratitude and guilt mingling in her gaze. "Thank you," she choked out. "I thought I was saving her by working so much. I never meant to leave her." Alexander offered a gentle nod. "You both have a lot to talk about. I'll give you privacy, but please know Mia is under my care until you're both ready to go home." As he stepped away, he heard Natalie explaining to her daughter, "I lost our apartment, sweetheart. I panicked." Mia's small voice trembled. "I waited because you said you'd be back." Natalie's tears fell anew. "I know, baby girl. I failed you." Inside the suite, Alexander drew in a shaky breath. When families fractured, it wasn't a boardroom dispute. It was real, raw pain. He realized his world had been pristine and ordered, yet he had never confronted true vulnerability. Now, standing witness to this reunion, he felt his heart expand. By mid-morning, Natalie and Mia had packed a single suitcase together. Mrs. Delgado oversaw a humble toast in the dining hall. Juice for Mia, coffee for Natalie, and Earl Grey for Alexander. The massive table, usually laden with opulence, held simplicity and warmth. Trio of mismatched mugs symbolized new beginnings. Natalie, gathering courage, addressed Alexander. "I want to thank you properly. I never expected such kindness from a stranger." She paused, then, "I also want to ask for help." Alexander inclined his head. "You have it." Natalie's eyes filled with both relief and indignation. "Help finding stable housing, fair wages. None of this should have happened in the first place. How many single mothers fall through the cracks in your buildings while you're busy chasing higher ROI? Her voice trembled at the end but carried righteous fury. He winced. Her anger was deserved. "You're right," he admitted. "I'll dedicate resources to affordable housing and living wages, starting today." He slid a file across the table. Preliminary plans for a subsidized housing wing on one of his development sites. "I want you to lead it. Help us design programs that actually work for families like yours." Natalie stared at the documents, tears glistening. Thank you." She looked at her daughter, who gripped her mother's hand. Mia's face shone with pride at the thought of her mother leading real change. That afternoon, the trio drove to a newly acquired lot on the city's northwest edge, one earmarked for a luxury tower before Alexander's transformation. Today, the cranes and concrete mixers signified something different, a mixed-use community center and affordable apartments. Families waved as Natalie and Mia hopped out, and Alexander greeted local organizers, handing out hard hats to children. Mia beamed in her bright yellow helmet, running to Natalie's side. "Look, Mom, the playground's going to be just like ours." She pointed to swings, slides, and a sandbox sketched on a blueprint. Natalie hugged her daughter. "This time, you'll never have to wait alone." Alexander watched them, heart swelling. He had spent decades constructing glass and steel monuments to success. Now his greatest creation would be a community where no child went hungry or without a home. Evening fell as they returned to Stonewood Manor for a celebratory dinner in the family wing, formerly off limits to all but the most formal guests. Tonight, laughter filled the air. Mia giggled as she taught Bruno a new trick. Natalie recounted her favorite childhood stories. Alexander listened, his eyes misty with joy. After dinner, they gathered in the library, a cozy alcove Alexander had transformed with plush sofas and framed family photographs. One wall now displayed a canvas painting of Mia and Bruno under an oak tree, commissioned by Natalie and Alexander earlier that day. Mia curled into her mother's lap, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Natalie looked to Alexander. "Would you stay for the bedtime story?" she asked softly. He smiled and sat beside her. Natalie opened a children's book and began reading about a brave little girl who waited by the park all night until a kind stranger rescued her and became her friend. Alexander recognized their story in every line. When Natalie finished, Mia yawned and kissed them both goodnight. Mrs. Delgado tucked her into a small bed in the family wing, her first conclusive, uninterrupted sleep in over a week. Later, Natalie and Alexander remained alone by the fireplace, embers glowing. The room felt intimate, a world away from corporate suites and legal briefs. Natalie took a deep breath. "I never believed a world like this existed," she said, gesturing to the hearth and the quiet warmth they shared. "Your kindness, it's changed my daughter's life." Alexander reached for her hand, the same hand he'd nearly choked back tears holding when she first met him in the hospital hallway. "You changed mine," he admitted. "I was building an empire but had no home. Until now." Natalie's eyes glistened. She squeezed his hand. "Thank you for seeing us." He brushed a hand across her cheek. Thank you for reminding me what truly matters." Above them, a portrait of Mia and Bruno under the oak tree seemed to glow in the firelight, a testament to hope and renewal. A final moment at the edge of Crestwood Park, where rusted benches once stood as the silent witness to a child's sorrow, now gleamed a brand new oak bench engraved with a dedication. "For every child who waits alone, may you find warmth, compassion, and home." On a crisp winter morning, Alexander, Natalie, and Mia arrived together, Bruno bounding at their heels. Mia hopped onto the bench and traced the inscription with her finger, awe in her eyes. Natalie knelt beside her daughter, wrapping her arm around her shoulders. Alexander stood behind them, hands resting gently on each of their shoulders. They gazed down at the bench, the bare oaks overhead, and the first snowflakes drifting down. Mia tilted her head back to catch them on her tongue, laughing. Natalie smiled, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. Alexander closed his eyes, letting the moment wash over him. Pride in his daughter, love for the mother he'd reconnected with, and a fierce determination that no child in his realm would ever wait alone again. As the camera pulls back, the trio becomes a single silhouette against the park's gentle snowfall. An unbreakable family forged from compassion, forgiveness, and shared purpose. And in that quiet snowfall, it wasn't merely the end of a rescue, it was the beginning of a new legacy, where love triumphed over loneliness, and a cold-hearted magnate discovered that the richest fortunes are found in the warmth of family. Have you ever wondered what happens when the loneliest soul with everything to his name stumbles upon the most vulnerable child who has nothing at all? The marble floors of the Stonewood Manor echoed hollowly beneath Alexander Stone's Italian leather shoes. At 42, Alexander wielded absolute power in the real estate world. Offices bent to his will, boardrooms trembled at his name. Yet in these vast, silent halls, 12,000 square feet of handcrafted luxury, there was not a single hint of life. No family photographs, no children's laughter, no warmth. Only the steady, measured footfalls of its master and the soft patter of Bruno, his German shepherd, at his side. "Cancel the gala." Alexander barked into his phone as he paused by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Crestwood City's glittering skyline. "Tell them I'll double my donation, only if it's worth my time." He clipped the phone closed without waiting for a response, swallowed by a solitude money could not buy. That evening, as a November chill settled across the outskirts, Alexander clipped Bruno's leash and made his usual solitary ritual, a walk through Crestwood Park. He preferred its emptiness, its predictable silence, where he could plan futures and mergers without interruption. As he wandered past leafless oaks, his breath misting in the lamplight, he barely noticed the cold, until Bruno stopped dead in his tracks. The dog's hackles rose, his ears pricked. Bruno tugged toward a shadowed bench, his low growl disrupting Alexander's composed calm. Curious more than alarmed, Alexander squinted through the darkness. Beneath a tattered blanket lay a small figure, curled tight against the biting wind. "Bruno, heel!" Alexander ordered, but for the first time the dog ignored him. Instead, Bruno bounded forward, nudging the stranger gently. The figure stirred, sitting up with the wary composure of someone much older. In the dim glow of a distant lamp, a little girl, no more than 9, glanced up, wide-eyed and trembling. Alexander's carefully measured heart wavered. I'm sorry," she murmured, voice remarkably steady. "I didn't mean to bother anyone." He frowned at her braveness. "Where are your parents? It's nearly midnight." She hugged a frayed backpack to her chest. "My mom said I should wait here. She'd be right back." Alexander felt anger prick his chest, anger at whatever adult would abandon a child to the cold. He stepped closer, his powerful frame dwarfing her slight form. "It's not safe to be out here alone." The girl hesitated, breath catching on the cold air. Then softly, "My name is Mia Thompson." She offered a stiff nod as though they met for business rather than in a deserted park at witching hour. "Alexander Stone," he replied on instinct, extending a hand. She glanced at the suit sleeve, surprised, then took his hand. It was ice cold. Only then did the details register. Her clothes were ragged but clean, her face streaked with dirt, her eyes reflecting years of hidden sorrow. How many nights had she endured this cold vigil? "When did you last eat?" he asked, tone gentler than he intended. "Yesterday morning," Mia confessed. "I had granola." Something inside Alexander cracked. The ruthless tycoon who ruled the skyline just moments ago felt a tug of remorse. He should call the authorities, summon help. Instead, he found himself dialing a number. "Officer Ramirez?" His voice was steady only because he had no time to be otherwise. "There's a child here, but I'd rather—" "Never mind. I'll handle it." He hung up. Mia watched him, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Are you going to send me away?" Alexander bent down, peering into the hollow ache of her gaze. He couldn't do it. Not tonight. Not to this child. "Come with me," he said, surprising himself. In the back of his chauffeured sedan, whom Alexander declined to dispatch tonight, Mia settled between plush leather seats, Bruno obediently at her feet. She shivered, clutching her backpack. Alexander sat quietly beside her, torn between protocol and compassion. "No police?" she ventured. He hesitated. "You'll be safe." By the time they arrived at Stonewood Manor, the grand entrance loomed like a mausoleum of riches. Mia's eyes widened as Alexander led her through the ornate foyer, past towering columns and priceless art. Memories of childhood seemed as distant to her as the icicles outside. Mrs. Delgado, the housekeeper of 15 years, appeared at the top of the grand staircase. "Mr. Stone?" Her voice caught midway as she saw Mia, slumped against Alexander's side. "I found her in the park," Alexander explained. "She needs somewhere to stay, just for one night." Mrs. Delgado's professional mask faltered into genuine concern. "A child, sir?" She exchanged a glance with Bruno, who wagged his tail. "Only until morning," Alexander said. "I'll call her mother first thing." Upstairs, Alexander showed Mia into a guest room larger than most people's apartments. A king-sized bed dominated the space, draped in silk linens. Designer lamps cast a warm glow across plush carpets. Mia's eyes flicked wide, as though she'd stepped into someone else's dream. "It's nice," she whispered. "It's yours until breakfast," Alexander replied softly. "If you need anything, Mrs. Delgado will help." He left her by the door, turning sharply to mask the ache in his chest. How could a child so brave be treated so cruelly by the world? He closed the door gently behind him. In the kitchen, Mrs. Delgado prepared a simple dinner. Warm soup and bread, the first hot meal Mia had eaten in days. She sat at the enormous dining table, small against the sprawling expanse. Alexander hovered, awkward in the domestic role of caretaker. "Thank you." Mia said quietly, spooning soup as though afraid to taste its comfort too eagerly. Eat slowly, Alexander murmured. You need to regain your strength. Between mouthfuls, Mia nodded, her eyes never leaving her bowl. He realized he had no idea how to talk to a child. His world was IPOs and acquisitions, not scraped knees or hungry bellies. Yet here he was, feeding someone else. After dinner, he found her sprawled on the bed, hugging her backpack as though it were a lifeline. Good night, he said, voice catching. Mia closed her eyes. Good night, Mr. Stone. He paused in the hallway listening. When he reached his office, an expanse of glass and mahogany, he sank into his chair, heart pounding. He'd brought a frightened child into his fortress of solitude. Was it madness or the first act of redemption? That night, Stonewood Manor slept deeply beneath its chandeliers. In one guest room, a small girl dreamed of a world kinder than the one she knew. And in another, a man who had everything yet felt he had nothing wept alone, quietly touched by the fragile hope he saw in her closed eyelids. Tomorrow he would make phone calls. Tomorrow protocols would resume. But tonight, Alexander Stone held on to a simple truth. Sometimes the greatest power lies not in crushing rivals, but in giving a child a single night of warmth and safety. Where does one begin to bridge the chasm between a ruthless tycoon and a child who has known only abandonment? Morning light crept through the soaring windows of Stonewood Manor as Alexander Stone descended the grand staircase. His tailored suit, once crisp and commanding, now felt stifling, an armor he no longer wished to wear. Bruno trotted beside him, his sable coat gleaming in the dawn. In the foyer below, Mrs. Delgado stood ready with 2 plates of scrambled eggs and fresh fruit. Mia, Alexander called gently, breakfast is served. The door to the guest suite opened slowly. The little girl, hair tousled and eyes bright with cautious hope, peeked out. She wore the oversized bathrobe Mrs. Delgado had lent her, the belt cinched awkwardly at her waist. When she saw the food, her stomach rumbled audibly. Come on down, he encouraged, offering a small smile. It was the first true expression he'd worn since rescuing her. Mia padded shyly to the table. She hesitated before picking up her fork, then tucked in ravenously. Alexander and Mrs. Delgado exchanged relieved glances. The child was safe, and for now normalcy reigned, even if only within these walls. Between bites, Alexander cleared his throat. Mia, I tried calling your mother last night, he began. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. There was no answer. Mia's face fell. A flicker of anxiety, one he recognized too well, passed across her eyes. She'll call back, she said quietly, hoping to reassure both of them. I'm going to make some more calls, Alexander said, rising from the table. You stay here and eat. Mrs. Delgado will keep you company. As he strode into the study, the trophies of his success, gleaming awards, framed magazine covers, suddenly felt hollow. He sank into his leather chair and dialed the number of the Children's Services helpline. After a brief conversation, he arranged to speak with a social worker named Miss Alvarez, no relation to his housekeeper, who was on duty that morning. Mr. Stone, Ms. Alvarez said, her tone warm and professional, I'm glad you called. We'll need your full account of what happened. But more importantly, we want to ensure Mia is safe and her mother is located. He explained the situation succinctly, then listened as Ms. Alvarez outlined the next steps. An immediate welfare check at the Thompson residence, an address Mia had given, a formal report to the police, and an interim guardianship plan if the mother remained unreachable. Thank you, he said. I'll cooperate fully. Also, Mia is under my roof for now. I want to provide whatever support she needs. It sounds like you already are, Miss Alvarez replied. We'll be in touch, Mr. Stone. He hung up, steeling himself for the day ahead. Leaving the study, he passed the guest suite, and through the slightly ajar door, he saw Mia leafing through a picture book Bruno had nudged toward her. A protective warmth blossomed in his chest. Her comfort mattered more than any boardroom conquest. By mid-morning, Alexander's limousine pulled to a halt in front of a modest brick row house on the east side, a place of peeling paint and overgrown shrubs. Mia's mother lived here, or at least had until 5 days ago. He climbed the narrow steps and knocked twice. No answer. He tried the doorknob. The door yielded, swinging inward onto a dim hallway cluttered with children's drawings and an overturned shoe rack. He called Miss Alvarez from the doorway. "I've gained entry. The apartment is empty, but for some personal items, clothes, a half-packed suitcase." "Stay safe," she warned. "I'm dispatching an officer to your location." While they waited, Alexander walked through the small living room. Sunlight filtered through dusty windows, illuminating a low-slung couch and a coffee table strewn with unpaid bills. He recognized the signs: eviction notices tucked under a newspaper, expired rental receipts on the table, a mother's desperation. When Officer Ramirez arrived 5 minutes later, he took one look inside. "Looks like she left in a hurry," he observed. "No sign of foul play, but child neglect is a real concern." Alexander agreed to file a report. They gathered the few belongings: Mia's mother's coat, a stack of photographs showing a smiling woman, and a smaller girl, Mia in happier times. Alexander took one photo of Mia clutching her mother's hand at a carnival, the other of a homemade birthday cake with "Happy 8th, Mia" scrawled in dripping frosting. "Here," Alexander said, handing the photos to the officer. "Hold on to these. They might help with locating her." Back in the car, neither spoke. The weight of reality pressed upon them. When they pulled into the manor's courtyard, Alexander met Mia at the door. "How was it?" she asked, bracing herself. "I'm afraid we didn't find your mother," he said, guiding her gently. "But we have leads, and you're safe here." Mia nodded, trusting him with the quiet strength of a survivor. In the afternoon, Alexander kept to his promise and arranged for Mia to continue her schooling remotely while authorities searched. He cleared one of his home office desks for her, a child-sized set of stationery, art supplies, and a laptop ready to connect to virtual classes. Mia hesitated at the threshold. "I've never done school at home," she admitted. "You'll be great," Alexander said, offering a reassuring smile. "And Mrs. Delgado will help if you need anything." As she settled in, he retreated to the study to handle business calls, though his mind was only half on negotiations. He found himself thinking of Mia, alone and astonishingly brave. He realized how little he understood of the world beyond his penthouse conference rooms. By late afternoon, a report came in. A neighbor had spotted Mia's mother working at a diner on the outskirts of town. She was alive but exhausted, trying to earn enough for rent and childcare. Alexander's chest tightened. Compassion mingled with frustration. Why hadn't she reached out sooner? He coordinated with Miss Alvarez to have the social worker meet the mother at the police station, offering transportation and support. Then Alexander returned to the manor's sunroom, where a fire crackled softly and Bruno waited expectantly. Mia sat cross-legged on the rug, coloring a picture of her and Alexander walking Bruno in the park, an image already etched into her memory. She looked up, timid but hopeful. "She's okay," Alexander said, settling beside her. "Your mom is safe and she misses you terribly. She'll be here tomorrow." Mia's relief was instantaneous, shoulders slumping, eyes shining with tears she held long enough to catch. "Will she be angry?" she whispered. "She loves you more than anything," Alexander assured her. "She just got in over her head." Mia nodded. "I'll forgive her." That evening, as Mia and Mrs. Delgado shared pizza in the grand dining hall, Alexander found himself sitting quietly at the head of the table, absorbing the warmth of their laughter. It felt strange, foreign, but wonderful. He realized this was the first time in decades he'd allowed himself to be part of something unstructured and unpredictable. He didn't know the protocol for fatherhood, but he knew he wanted to learn. After dinner, Alexander walked Mia back to her guest room. She hugged him tight, a child's embrace with all the gratitude and trust in the world. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving me." He bent down until their foreheads touched. "You saved me too."